Hello and welcome to the business Q&A sessions with Meeta and Tosh. Hello to everyone. And hi Tosh, how are you doing?
Morning. How you doing? I got a bit of tickly throat today.
Oh dear. I tell
Not
you what,
COVID, not COVID, all right? I'll just say that, but just a little bit of a. So if I'm a little, that'll be why, okay?
Yeah, it's not isn't a hint about something then.
That's right. Yeah. So how are you doing? How's the week been so far?
Good. I think we're seeing some really positive steps out there in the news and hearing about how COVID is starting to come under control and things are starting to open up. I did a day in London last week. I think I mentioned it on the webinar last week, but
yeah. You said it was like 28 days later or something.
Well, it's busier now. This week is easier than before, and even though government guidelines are for people to stay at home, I think everybody wants to test the muscle. People want to test what it's like to get on the train, what it's like to go back to work. And, our session today is all around the focus from last week. We did a poll, and the biggest challenge that employers were finding were around performance management and motivation and not performance management, motivation and engagement, of which you and I have put three things together today that we're going to talk about, because a lot's changing again, isn't it? A year ago, it was lockdown. Now we're coming out of lockdown and there's a whole new set of challenges for employers and employees to face.
Yeah, it's totally right. You know what? We've been doing this for 12 months. We all have been, right? Working completely differently, understanding, motivation, mental health. I mean, these are massive buzzwords for the last 12 months, and they're real. They're real things, and there's a spectrum of them, and how they're handled is really difficult, and how they are handled by different employers, and having the skills to deal with them properly, I think, is what we're trying to impart over the last 12 months as well. And today's session is also a little bit about that.
That's so true, what you said about buzzwords. Actually, we've always driven our Q&A sessions around buzzwords. I remember the first one being furlough. Now we're talking about buzzwords like hybrid and what that means. D&I, fortunately, has become not just a requirement of an organization, but a driver, a desire, a goal of organizations. So we're going to be talking about three things today. First of all, hybrid working. We know that there's challenges, there's benefits, there's all sorts of things going on, but we have to cover hybrid working because a recent poll, I like my stats, by Hackjob came back that 76% of workers said that flexible working environments matter to them more than, check this out, annual leave, learning and development, private healthcare or pension. People want flexibility. Employers are working. So
and it makes sense, doesn't it? Especially in the current times. But also, people shouldn't forget that there are still legal processes in place for flexible working requests. It's not just the case of going. I mean, obviously, employers can choose a lot more flexibility. Sorry, I keep using that word. They can adopt an approach where they can be more open. But the law actually is a lot more restrictive than with flexible working requests than you might think. So I'll be going through that as well when we discuss that particular point.
Thanks, Tosh. Because I think the feedback I spoke to some attendees after the session last week, and people want more guidance and people want more clarity. I think the challenge here is, yes, we have the law, but then we have what a company will adopt as their policy. And
that's right.
Exactly. We've been working with employers directly. We've been consulting with them to write their flexible working policies. But it has to be what you want as an employer. Tosh and I here can give you the parameters within which we recommend you work, right? That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Second topic we're covering is diversity and inclusion, and what you need to do to bring your people along on the journey and make them proud of the organization they work with. Again, I'm hearing about people walking with their feet when they don't agree with the way they've been treated by their employer's policy on flexible and hybrid working, their employer's approach to diversity and inclusion. People are leaving. And a lot of organizations, I always say it comes back to communication and clarity of communication. A lot of organizations have great intentions, but don't always manage to deliver and demonstrate everything they have in place. So we're going to be talking about practical steps that organizations can take to have a good strategy and have an inclusive working environment. That's so important. And then
it's not some tree hugging stuff, it's real. It's having values, getting people aligned to it. Otherwise, what you get is people just clocking in 9 to 5, there's no engagement. And if you get people aligned with what those values are and what you're trying to do and your purpose, and that goes both ways, as in understanding what your people want out of their job and out of their lives, the engagement and the benefits that employers will get is tremendous. So that is also part of our engagement and understanding the difference that communication and relationships will have in the workplace, right?
Yeah, completely. And then finally, we're talking performance, and we're saying how to get your people to step up or step out. You know, ultimately,
that was me, wasn't it? That's that title.
That was his phrase, and actually, that's what we need. We know how much time can be wasted spending on. I always think about sometimes when we do talent attraction for our clients, then they found the right person, and then they'll say, "Yeah, but we're in the middle of performance managing the person that we're removing from the role. So this person will have to wait 6 weeks to 2 months while we deal with this person going." And it's like, but all of that management time on somebody that is no longer aligned with the organization, why would you spend that time on them? Why not spend your time on the people that are going to be engaged and enhance and add value back to your organization? So it's just doing it smartly, isn't it? All of these things are going on all of the time, but it's being smart about it.
And it's knowing your choices. What kind of organization do you want? You don't have to be a mean person, but you do need to be firm and fair and understand what your priorities are. And you know what? Sometimes you've got to know, you've got to let people go. Yeah. Maybe after you've tried. And also sometimes you've got to know when it's enough, when enough is enough. And trust your instinct. You know, as decision makers, CEOs, managers, I bet a lot of the time you realize if I just listened to my gut instinct in the first place, I probably would have saved a lot of time and hassle. But you know what? You make a decision about something and then you kind of stick to it. You think, oh gosh, I've already made that decision. Let's try and sort it out. But, you know, there's different ways to handle all of those types of situations. Yeah. I'm going to go through that. I'm going to go through all of that.
We're going to run through it. Quick bit of housekeeping. As always, Tosh and I are on for about 30 to 40 minutes on air. We have a chat box here, which we would really value your input in, whether it's a comment, whether it's a question. Please share and add your thoughts and comments and questions in that, because ultimately, the more interactive we are, the more useful this next 30 to 40 minutes can be for you.
Yeah, this is not some, where we're just going to lecture you or anything. Use us. You've got two experts here that are genuinely trying to help. We're doing this, we can't not be genuine if we haven't been doing it for about 14 months now. Yeah. And look, it's been tremendous value to the people that have been participating in this. Anything you've got in there, we'll answer it. It doesn't even have to be about today's topic, to be honest. But if it is, obviously, that's more relevant. And if you are feeling shy or you come up with something afterwards, get in touch with us offline. We'll pick up the phone. We'll talk to you. We'll map out things for you. Happily talk to you about whatever problems you're facing, or people problems or workplace problems. Meeta and I are here to be on hand. And some of you have taken us up on that offer and been very pleasantly surprised to know that it's true, what we're saying, and that we really do help. And some of you haven't. But pick up the phone. What's the point of just, sitting there, sitting sort of back there? Interact with us, please, and let us know what your problems are. I bet we will find a clever way of solving whatever situation you're dealing with. That's definitely a promise.
And much faster as well, which I think is also a challenge for so many, with time being a challenge. Now, we do a poll. We always like your feedback. So the question on our poll today is, which hybrid model return to work challenge are you currently facing? Flexible working requests, performance management issues, or motivation and engagement? And so far, half and half are for flexible working and motivation. So
that's few people voting, isn't it, Meeta?
Well, hopefully we'll get a few more people. If you could give us your thoughts on that. Thank you. Yeah, now some more are putting in. Flexible working's gone up. It helps us to know. And actually, one of the things we've not mentioned before, but it's a great idea, is if you have ideas for future webinars, just put them in the chat box as well. Future topics. We always look back on this anyway, so it would be good to have a look at what
I'm going to say a different word. I'm going to say current topics. What are you dealing with right now? What are your nightmares right now? We'll get on it straight. If it's important enough to you, we'll do it in the next session. We'll just move our timetable along. It's got to be current for you. This is not some chit chat and general information sort of situation of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to do something that's really current for you. So just talk to us. Let us know.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. So let's dive into flexible working requests, Tosh. How to have those tough conversations around hybrid working. That is our first topic.
Can I dive in first with the legal position on flexible working? So what the law says on flexible working is that anybody can apply for flexible working, right? In the old days, it had to be to look after a child up to the age of 6, or up to a child up to the age of 18 if they were disabled or something like that. There were various rules in play. That's all out the window now. Anybody can ask for a flexible working request. What does that mean? That means changes in your hours, days, times, whatever the arrangements are. And that flexibility also doesn't just mean part-time, it can be variable hours and all that sorts of things. So it's whatever arrangements you want to come to. But what the law says is you can only make one flexible working request per year. So if the employee makes a written, and it has to be in writing, as in legally, it should be in writing. I think most people will probably circumvent that process. But legally speaking, you put it in writing to your employer, you set it out what it is that they want, and the employer has 9 reasons that they could refuse that request. Maybe it's a detrimental impact on customer demand or inability to reorganize work or whatever it is. There are genuine reasons that they could say no. And if they say no, that's it. There is an appeal process as well, although strangely, the law doesn't say that the employer's got to follow the appeal process with a flexible working request. Weird. So that's the strict letter of the law, which is actually quite odd, isn't it? Because it doesn't really allow for employee engagement and employers to talk to their employees to make things work. It just says they can say yes or no. So that's not the approach that we're adopting here, is it?
No, because we want to keep our employees in our world and we want to keep them engaged and productive for the future. Now, I've got a bit of a glitch.
Lawyer saying don't follow the law.
Well, you've always told us, Tosh, the law isn't what you can and can't do. The law is what the consequences are on what you choose to do.
Exactly right. I've always said that the law is not about what you can. It doesn't say you can or can't do anything. It's always about what are the consequences if you don't do something. So agree with your staff. It's never going to end up in court anyway.
So Kate here has said a flexible working policy template would be useful. And Maureen has said that she's looking forward to our pearls of wisdom. Thank you, Maureen. I hope they are wise pearls and add value back to you in your world. So what would a template include, Tosh? If an employer, because I think that's definitely been the feedback, is we bring parameters. It's very difficult, I think, to create a template that is one size fits all, because it doesn't, does it?
No, it's impossible. The template is a template letter, Meeta, like the request I just talked about. That has a pro forma. That has a set way of asking, what do I want? Why do I want it? When do I want it by type of thing? But flexible working by its very definition means it's going to be a case-by-case basis, isn't it? And you're going to have a common sense conversation with your employee about, this is what you want. Okay, how do we make that work? Because it's a two-way street. It's not just about the employee's needs. Don't forget the employees coming from their selfish motivations. I don't like to use that word, but let's say it's that. Yeah. And then employers also have a selfish motivation to make the business work. They're both good selfish reasons.
Well,
so it's got to be a fit.
An employer's role, and I know you and I are poles apart in terms of carrot and stick, but actually, every organization wants to maximize the return on investment, their bottom line. If it's not for a profit organization, is the donations and the impact they're having on the chosen causes. So ultimately, the employer has to hold the organization's objectives strong. That's it. That's their role. Then they can establish what they can offer in terms of flexible working or agree. And I think a lot of employers, and I'm thinking about from experience as well, is that you worry about setting the precedent. I think most employers would prefer to have a policy that they could, if anyone asks, they say, well, here's our policy, fit within it.
And flexible working policies exist. There's no issue with it. It's more about process, but it's left open, isn't it? So you're right. I think the starting point is that the employer needs to know exactly where they're at. What are they trying to do? And then they see how the request fits with that requirement. It's got to be that way. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And I think with the hybrid working world that we're now about to embark on, there are so many factors that need to be considered. And one of them we're going to cover, which is around performance. But actually, motivation and engagement are going to start being challenged with people being in two places. Problems and challenges that we never imagined are now going to become more prevalent, and we'll probably be covering them in these webinars going forward. However, it's really important for an employer to think about whether their organization is geared to measure outputs, because I think everyone's worry with flexibility is, if everyone wants to be flexible, who's going to do the work? Are they going to be in the office? Is it going to impact the future of the organization? So really think about, how do we measure what good looks like? How do we measure?
You, for example, when I were talking before, I got rid of my office because it just didn't seem to work. And I will get an office again one day, because there's benefits to having everybody in the hub and the vibe and the information and sharing, all that sort of stuff. But actually, you are doing it. You said about to embark on a hybrid working, but actually you're doing that.
We've always had a hybrid approach. Obviously, it's now going to be probably 100% of our team will have hybrid working, whereas prior it was probably only about a third of our team had hybrid working, but we had agility. And ultimately, we measure it in two ways. We measure it on culture, so engagement, positivity, behaviors. We equally measure people on their behaviors and their output from a person perspective to, are they achieving their role? You know, in our environment, we measure points of contact with our client world. We measure how successfully we've been able to bring talent into our client's world or been able to train. We do feedback from our stakeholders. We do 360 appraisals. So we ask clients, we ask candidates, we ask strategic alliances, what's your experience of us? So I really think it all starts with my two favorite things are job descriptions and structured one-on-one sessions. I think those two things can ensure that if an employer gets a flexible working request, they don't have to panic. They can think, what are the outputs of that role, and how do we ensure that that person continues to deliver regardless of where they are?
Yep, that makes sense, and it's practical, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got a comment here actually from Chris. Chris says, I wonder if we ought to move the discussion on from flexible hybrid remote working onto what we facilitate as effective working. Yeah, absolutely. This, of course, will be more nuanced than a one-size-fits-all approach. Exactly. Then this must then include the best use of technologies. Absolutely, Chris. This is exactly what we're talking about, is that I think flexible working is also a great retention tool. It builds trust and confidence. We've seen in the last year how much productivity has increased. So it's important for employers to think about overall organisation, but also the individual and how they can deliver back. What about in terms of technology? What are your thoughts on tech? Since you're fully remote, Tosh, how do you use technology for flexible working?
Yeah, we just try to replace everything that we had in the offices as fast as possible. I've said this many times before. It's a little bit like, you and me going for a drink over Skype. You can do it. It's not quite the same as sitting in the pub together or in a restaurant. But you adapt to that. And everybody's got used to it now, haven't they? It's got to the point now where people don't call each other anymore. Should we do a quick Zoom call? No, phone's fine.
Yeah.
We're almost kind of overusing the technology now. You have a Zoom day of it, and it can be quite exhausting. But the technology is, if you can think it, it can happen. And that's certainly something I've learned. You just think about a different way of working, and there is a solution to it. Like any other idea that's gone out into the world, you just have to think it and start to take steps to implement those things to make it work. That's not going away, certainly.
And so many organizations already have this technology in their world. Microsoft 365 has Teams, there's a chat box in there. When we talk to some of our network clients about communication in the hybrid world, they're not even using the tools that they have. We weren't pre-lockdown. So really go back to your tech people and say, this is what we need. What do we already have in our world that we can implement on the ground?
It's a bit like our phones, Meeta, isn't it? How much of the stuff do you use on your phone?
Yeah.
In the good old days, I know we use emails. It started with just phone calls, didn't it? Text. And then it was, now it's WhatsApp. Now and then using it for the internet, everyone uses it for their sat nav. But there's a whole, we're still probably using like 5% of what the purpose or capacity or the functions of the phone are. It's the same thing with all the other systems that we use. You just use what you use and what you think you need, but actually there's a lot more that you can benefit from.
And now's the time to research that and implement it. So we've got a couple of comments in the chat box here, which is great. So Kate B asks, can you create a template in the sense that the team can spend 3 days in the office and 2 at home per week, for example? Yeah, an employer can create any template they want. They can have any blueprint for what flexible working is going to be in their world.
That sounds a bit like a timetable to me, Meeta. You're setting out a template for how people will work and how when people are coming in and these days and those days, and then it all kind of fits like little pieces of a puzzle together in terms of how it works in the week. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And again, if that's something that you want our advice on, pick up the phone. Let's talk about it. We can help everyone with their own individual templates and structures. We have a question from Helen. Helen says, we have an employee who has recently put in flexible working requests to reduce their hours of work. However, their current role is less secure due to budget constraints, and we don't know for certain if there is an impact later in the summer. How should we handle this?
Well, if it doesn't fit, you remember I said before, Helen, the focus has to be what are the needs of the business. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. If you have concerns about how that will go going forward, well, you've got a choice. You can either do it on a trial period and make it very clear that, look, we're going to do it on this basis right now. But if these things come into play, then it's all changed when we go back to where it is. It's about managing expectations and telling the employee, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. We'll try and make it work, but understand that if circumstances change, we'll have to go back to whatever it is. So I guess that would be my advice on the situation, but it's got to be easy for you. I used the word selfish before, and it's a horrible word, isn't it? But that's what I want you to be really about it, Helen. Is how does it work for you? And the employee, and if you put it in writing, the employee cannot then just negate it later on when you try and change things later on. So either you're going to say, yeah, let's do it for a trial period, subject to these changes happening, and then we'll go back or what have you, or you're just going to say no because we've just got too many issues that are unclear, uncertain. I told you there are 9 different reasons to refuse a flexible working request. And by the way, that flexible working request should be in writing. If it's not in writing legally, it doesn't actually count. So I can go through that with you in more detail. But if things like, what you said actually, Helen, inability to meet customer demand, inability to reorganize work, maybe plan structural changes within the organization, that means that this may not be a viable flexible working request that we can comply with.
Yeah. I think many employers are less concerned with the legal no's, and more concerned with the disengagement that may then come from the employee. So it's finding that balance. And I really like that actually, what you said about saying yes for a time, or how about no, but let's revisit this in 6 months and see where we are then, or 3 months.
That's so current. One of my clients this week, they were saying to me about the employer, their Salesforce, they wanted their Salesforce to start coming back flexibly into the workplace. And I said the hard line that I just said with Helen, in fact, which was, well, you can make the choices, it's your decision. He goes, that's fine. I know I've got the power, but I don't want to disengage them. If I'm going to start getting hard about it, what if my guys start to go? Yeah. So it's a balance, isn't it? But the balance, which was the solution that came up with that particular client, Helen, which may also be relevant to what you've just said, was being open and transparent about what you're doing, why you're doing it, why is it important, addressing the concerns, and overcoming the challenges that they're presenting to you for not working the way you want to work.
Yeah.
Because then it's basically showing that they're being very unreasonable about it. And then they're in a corner. And it's very difficult for them to start arguing that what they're saying is right or not. So it's really being open about what you're doing and why.
Yeah, and we've got some really great comments there. Joellen, hi Joellen, good to see you back on here. Joellen says it isn't about being selfish, it's about balancing the needs of the organisation with the needs of the
Yes, that's a much better way of describing it. That's what I meant, Joellen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Maureen says we're thinking about wording that suits an organisation, and they're looking at using a phrase for their policy around we are committed to a style of working that includes office and remote working.
You know what? Language shapes behaviour. So understanding the right kind of language, which I didn't do when I used the word selfish. So thanks, Joanne, for that. Understanding the right type of language will emote different types of behaviour and responses. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, everyone. What a powerful session. And as always, the thing about flexible working in this hybrid working world is that one size doesn't fit all. We can help you work out what your size fit is for your organisation. That can be a chat on the phone. We can write you a template and a plan that you can apply for each and every department in your organisation. So again, if there's any queries or anything that you want to talk further, please reach out to Tosh and I, and link us on LinkedIn as well. We're always putting thought pieces in there around areas that are current and challenging our clients at the moment.
You know what? And if you don't want to talk to us, you can WhatsApp us or email us or message us on LinkedIn. There's so many, ways you can just get the information you need, all right?
Yeah, indeed. So our next topic is all around diversity and inclusion. And as we said at the beginning, it's great feeling that it's no longer a requirement, but actually it's an intention. And I think actually diversity and inclusion are two very different things. One is about bringing people into your organization and having an environment that attracts those people. But the inclusivity of it is actually eating, living and breathing that, and it becomes part of your culture. And so today we're not going to talk about the benefits of a diverse and inclusive workforce. We know that they improve productivity, they improve engagement, it improves retention of talent, it improves creative thinking. It's the future, and it's there for the most successful organizations. The more diverse and inclusive, the more successful they are. So we know it's the right thing to do. I think what we want to talk about today is what are the practical structures and behaviors we can put in place to demonstrate and live and breathe inclusivity.
I think people do these core value policies and, this is what our mission is and all those sorts of things. And that's all well and good, but it's only well and good insofar as it's true. Some of these things are very corporate. Some of these things are very, company policy type of thing. So the idea actually, as tree huggy I'm about to get right now, it's about what's in here and what's in here as well. And then acting out those things. So what you're saying is consistent with what you're doing. Yeah. It's really that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's becoming part of the fabric of the organization rather than an intention or a policy or something that is a tick box. And employees absolutely are barometers of authenticity, honesty. They know when an organization is doing it because of saying they're doing it and doing it because they want their employees to feel part of something greater. And we have is it Ngozi? I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Ngozi. The discussion on diversity should also include a sense of belonging as well. Yes, absolutely. God, I mean, that gives me goosebumps thinking about that. When employees feel like they're part of something that's bigger than them individually, the power of that connectivity and the power of that organization is infinitesimal, isn't it, Tosh? I mean, having people shoulder to shoulder, building something together around a culture, around a mission. It's everything. And, I was talking to somebody yesterday saying, an organization can sell, I mean, look at, Amazon isn't a very good example because unfortunately they don't have a good reputation, but there are other brands that might be selling soft drinks, but there's corporate social responsibility message is so strong. The charities they work for, their carbon footprint, their diversity and inclusion approach, those are the things that make people want to work for them, not the fact that they're selling soft drinks and they like that soft drink, but who they are. So don't think, oh, well, no one's going to want to work for us because all we do is very boring. It's not, you can make your work really attractive.
Why do you get out of bed in the morning?
Yeah.
Are you going there to make some money? Well, you can do loads of things to make some money. Or how about something that has some purpose, or that's something you feel proud about, or something that you want to talk about? Well, that's the type of organization. That's what makes great organizations, right? The other ones are clock in, clock out. Sorry. Oh God, thank God it's Friday. Oh God, it's Monday. That sort of attitude, rather than looking forward to it. I've said this many times before. If you are working full time, let's say, and you're working 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, you're spending more time with your work colleagues than you are with your friends and family. If you don't love it, go and do something else. There's plenty of things to go and do out there. So that alignment and that sense of purpose and fulfillment, they're not just buzzwords. That it really makes a difference to your life. Two people can look at the same situation completely differently. One looks at it very positively, one looks at it very negatively. I think we were talking about it with a train journey once, Meeta. And you were talking about, oh gosh, the train journey it's a long trip, it's about an hour. I hate it. So, but why don't you use it as like time? You can read the stuff, or use an Audible book, or that's a big a thing a lot of people do. You start to get knowledge and use it for a different purpose and look at it differently, right? Same thing with work.
In an organization, and it's important for an employer to create an environment of inclusivity, and that will allow employees to be able to look at the greatness of the organization they work for and what they do and how they put good out there. And I've actually come up with some ideas. We're doing D&I audits now for clients. We're actually going in, we're looking at their world, we're looking at their structure, and we are making recommendations on what they should put in place. And from this, we've pulled together ideals and approaches that organizations can have to create a really strong diversity and inclusion strategy, which also has an inclusive behavior as an outcome. So first and foremost, encourage more paternity leave. Don't just have, and I know that sounds, like quite starting with, we're pushing men out there to become more paternal. Well, ultimately, it's about the balance and being inclusive. So encourage paternity leave, create awareness around pronouns, get everyone to have their pronouns. If that's something as an organization you want to have, think about the different types of disabilities that are happening in the working world, and have people come in and do talks about it. I found out yesterday from one of my clients, they support the deaf community, and they support deaf people to become more socially interactive. 75% of their workforce are deaf, and they have onboarding inductions where they help their both sides of the team to be able to understand and work together. BSL, British Sign Language, is the #1 language in the organisation. But did you know that every organisation that has a deaf or blind person in their working world will get a £48,000 grant to support them with whether it's interpreters or technology? But there are ways. Yeah, I didn't know that. So
I want to slightly flip this conversation, which is also have an exclusion policy. What do you think about that? So you know what? Not everybody's a right fit. I don't mean because of protected characteristics, disability, race, sex, religion, any of those things. Sometimes that maybe they're not aligned with the organization. Sometimes you've got to get really comfortable to just let people go because this isn't right for them. You're not right for them. They're not right for you. And understanding that actually maybe you can let some people go quite nicely because they're not a right fit. Obviously, you don't have an exclusion policy, but I'm saying in our mind or in our behaviors, you should know that everybody isn't going to be aligned with you. So sometimes understand when there should be time to let somebody go as well, right?
Well, we're not ready to move on to performance management yet, Tosh, but it is about having that culture. And I think culture has always been something that I feel is really important. We always say culture eats strategy for breakfast. You have everyone aligned with the same mindset and approach. They drive your organization forward without needing managers to tell them what to do. You empower them. Other things I think really good is good behaviors and good approaches to inclusivity is a company that keeps an up-to-date intranet of information. So look at what the characteristics are of different groups, have all the celebratory days available, have religious days, have a Did You Know Day, and have events, have people to come in and speak, have your people from within the organization bring their world to life for other people. If we talk about it, we normalize it. If we normalize it, it stops being something we do intentionally, and it becomes part of the fabric of our world. And that is when we become truly inclusive, isn't it?
Well said. Very well said. Absolutely right.
Yeah. And there's a few more things. So ultimately, what I think is that you as an organization are thinking about your D&I strategy. And actually that starts with how you hire and recruit. So people want to see like-minded people in their world. Ask your diverse and inclusive people, who do they know from their communities that might be right for your organization? And it all starts from that, and then you develop it. So it's exciting times, and most importantly, you can overcome skills gaps, you can overcome creativity blocks, you can create the most productive and profitable working world for your organization with great diversity and inclusivity. So let's do this, and it's just the beginning. And I could talk about this all day, so I'll be quiet now.
No, it's good stuff. People don't. We forget these things sometimes, and we need to go back to essentials, and that's the point. So good. And if you haven't got these things in place, let us know. We can give you the tools. We can figure out exactly what you need. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we are helping clients go from having a policy page right through to having a 12-month plan for culture and inclusivity and days of celebration and so on. There's just different ways. Again, one size doesn't fit all, but there is a right approach for each organization, and we can help you with that. Right, Tosh, on to the last topic, which is all around performance. How do we get our people to step up or step out?
So, I'm a much more hardline thing. I'm going to look at consequences. I know you will look at motivation, and that's right. I guess the question is, what motivates the employee to step up or step out? Is it that we're going to use the carrot and stick example? Is it incentivizing them, or is it the consequences of actions if they don't do the right thing? I think that depends obviously on the personality and nature of the employee, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's you're from that school. I'm very much from the school of if you hire right, they're culturally aligned. Well, then if they're not performing, it's probably because they don't know what they're supposed to do. There might be some grey areas around their job description and defining what good looks like for them. Especially in their
I think also it comes down to time. A lot of time, as wonderful as those things are and correct as they are, a lot of people, managers, CEOs, they don't have the time to indulge that level of detail, perhaps, maybe at their peril. And they have to make quick decisions. It depends what type of organizations you are, whether you've got the time to do those things, grow your people, train your people. Well, that's fantastic. But a lot of organizations, SMEs, they don't. It's kind of step up or step out. And the way that I've always advised clients is a little bit like Super Nanny. Do you remember that program?
Of course, yeah.
Super Nanny law is what I call it. Anyone that doesn't know, there's a lady called Jo Frost, who's a nanny that goes into these houses where there's unruly kids and the parents don't know how to handle them. And Jo Frost goes in there and she gets a system in place, which is about action and consequence. And if the children don't behave properly, they get to sit on the naughty step. That's basically employment law. 3 naughty steps and you're out of the house. So the analogy is with employees is if they're not stepping up, you've got to tell them not just what they need to do, how they need to do it, and why they need to do it, and when they need to do it by. So what often happens, it might be me. So let's say it's you. I think we did one of our performance mock cases one time. And I say to you, look, I want you to hit your target of £1 million a week. Well, whoop-de-doo. How am I supposed to do that? So I need to map it out why that it is that's reasonable. But at the same time, if I've explained how you do it and you don't deliver, you need to be clear what the consequences are from a legal point of view. And those consequences are the disciplinary ladder. Verbal warning, first written warning, final written warning, then you're out. Now, that is the very strict legal step up or step out. It's a very consequences approach. I think what you're talking more about is training and appraisal systems and really getting to the hub and working it out. And if it doesn't work, then adopting that approach. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think if you were to look at performance management, you and I, manage the full 360 of that cycle. And absolutely, if we don't want to have any employment tribunals brought against us for unfair dismissal or constructive dismissal, I think it's really important for employers to have the clarity on what good looks like, have a good one-on-one structure, feedback loop, coaching, all of those in place. Because ultimately, we don't hire people for them to fail. We don't hire them with the intention of them failing. We hire them for the intention of them being successful, engaged, delivering, and having a successful organization as a result. So when it doesn't happen, sometimes people are years in, something's happened there. So let's find out why. Let's get under the skin. And it's important you've got that clarity as an employer. Whether it's bi-monthly catch-ups, do your appraisal, don't just have a chat. Get the job description and score each other. Score yourself. Let the manager score the person, let the individual score themselves, and then talk about it. If there's a disconnect between the scoring, that's where there's a misunderstanding of what the expectation is on the role. But once you get into the performance management element of it, you're absolutely right, Tosh. Nobody wants to be performance managed. Again, I have a statistic where something like 67% of employees felt that their performance management process wasn't motivational or didn't make them want to do better. So something.
You're absolutely right. Again, we mentioned it earlier. It's language that shapes behavior. So how you communicate with your employees to get them to step up is going to be crucial. But one of the things I found quite interesting that you just said now was getting it right from the beginning, getting your recruitment right at the beginning. I've always got this thing in my head. I think it's maybe it's a Chris Rock stand-up thing. And he says, when you meet somebody for interview, you never meet that person. You meet the best representation of that person. And then only when they got the job that they start let their hair down, and then you see what they're really like, and they're like, oh gosh, now we've got to go through performance and all that sort of stuff.
Tosh,
get it right at the beginning.
Yes, and I'm a big advocate of the first 100 days. I've written a training program about it. If anyone's interested.
The first 100 days?
First 100 days. I mean, I know Joe Biden's about to complete his first 100 days, but for an organization, every employee's first 100 days are everything. Because you're right, interview Joe blogs or Mary blogs isn't the Mary Joe blogs that you're going to get forever. So those first 100 days are really important for both sides. And I wrote a 20-minute masterclass, which is a little training video with slides on how to make sure those first 100 days onboard your people properly. But that wasn't a plug. That was just a bit of advice. And
that's fascinating, Meeta. We should do that as a topic. That's something we haven't talked about this before. First 100 days, because if you can get it right at the beginning, well, then we don't have to keep picking the rotten fruit, do we? We got everything right from the very start, or as much as we can do. I think that would be a benefit for the people that are plugging into this. Certainly for us as well.
Because when you set the scene and you tell your employees that we're an environment of being exceptional, there will be feedback, there will be coaching. How would you like to receive that coaching? When they get a performance review, actually they'll welcome it. because they want to be the best that they can be. And then that will change the motivation to want to do better. So unfortunately, before, you know, these 80% of 67% of people that didn't value the performance management process probably didn't have the right onboarding, the right management up to that point. So what's important for you as employers, I would say, is get it right from the start. And if you haven't got it right then, get it right now. You know, revisit it, refine it, get the job description right, get what good looks like right, get a good feedback loop going, coach them, explain that we are an environment of high standards and we will be coaching you. How do you like to receive coaching? Joellen says, Joellen has a question. Do you think probation periods should be longer than 3 months, which is the norm? Yeah, Joellen, we have 6-month probation periods in the main world. And Tosh, what do you think from?
I think that you have a probationary period which confirms that the probationary period is not concluded until it's confirmed in writing. And on that basis, it will continue to be extended until the position is confirmed as permanent. And that would be valid, actually, up to 2 years in reality, because obviously unfair dismissal rights, Joellen, don't apply until somebody's reached 2 years anyway. So you can do what you like in the first 2 years, pretty much. Yeah. But the probationary period, what is it actually for? It's to how long does it actually take for you to assess that they're the right person? A year? 2 years? Really? I don't think so. I think 6 months, you should really have a good idea. And then if you're sticking with them then, well, I suppose you've decided to just put up with the bits that you don't like, or you decided to invest in the training and the time to change whatever it is. I'm just conscious of time, but
I know.
We've got another question.
Crystal's made a comment as well. Crystal, likewise, the 6 months, but it can also be extended to 12 months if performance isn't satisfactory. So yeah, absolutely. This is very much about making sure you use the probation period well. And let's do those first 100 days as a session, Tosh. I feel like we've just got under the skin of performance management. So we promised to do a 100-day session. We promised to do a performance management session, I think, in its entirety as well. And thank you, everyone. We are going to wind it up. It is 41 minutes now, so we've gone over time a bit, and we know how precious time is. But we are here every Thursday at 11 a.m., and we will send you all the recordings of today's session as well. Thank you for your input. And Tosh, as always, it's been a pleasure.
And you, Meeta, and everybody, look, connect with us on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Loads of free stuff out there as well. Just loads of good that will help you as well. So connect with us there, and we'll see you again next week.
Absolutely. See you then. Bye all.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.